Hi, welcome everybody to the Inflow Experience Podcast. Really excited for our episode today with our guest Nikola Mrkšić, the CEO and co-founder at PolyAI. Really great Inflow partner. And overall, just excited for the conversation today. Nikola, welcome and thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me. It's good to be here.
Yeah, absolutely. So for our audience who maybe doesn't know of Poly or hasn't heard us, I would really love for you to tell us just a little bit about yourself and about PolyAI. I know you guys are really innovative and a great partner of ours. And so would love to just hear sort of the PolyAI story and what you're solving for out there for customers.
Absolutely. Well, look, we build voice assistants for customer service. So we help companies improve their customer experience by answering the phone 24/7 with a hyper-realistic voice that can hold a conversation in much the same way that a human can. So, it picks up the phone, has, exactly the kind of like attitude, disposition, tone of voice, dialect that you want it to have, maybe several, right? And just holds that conversation. And, we're trying to change the way that people feel about voice assistants by creating things that can either hold that conversation and help you with the use case you have in mind, or they realize quickly that they might not even be programmed to do a particular use case, or they might be struggling with your accent or God knows what background noise. And in that case, they realize they're struggling really fast and hand you off to a human agent so that you have a good experience. And that puts you in a priority queue, passes context, so that the whole thing becomes like something that is a really good experience rather than the classic 7-layer labyrinth defense that is intended to just get you to not want to speak to anyone and probably not do business with that company. But people think about that later, right?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, there's nothing more frustrating than being, stuck in an IVR loop or queue or, sort of being forced to speak to technology when it doesn't work right. I think, and unfortunately, I think because of some of that history that we've got in this space, and that's sort of what people are used to. People think AI or voice bot or intelligent virtual agent, and associate it with that negative context of, oh man, I've had experiences like that before. I don't want to deal with that. I want to just talk to a live person. And I think it's really a great differentiator of you all is that you want to make sure that if we need to, we can still get someone right to a live agent. Because I think one of the big things that people struggle with today is, well, in addition to all the sort of baggage, if you will, of bad technology that we've got, from dealing with it for however long we have, we also don't want to have technology so good that we don't need our agents anymore, that we replace our agents. And I know that's not your goal. So you could, elaborate on that.
Even if you wanted to do that, the reality is that, and we're at the forefront. We've been doing this stuff for about a decade. We started off when deep learning was taking off. We did our PhDs on it and then kind of like focused ourselves on creating a company where we'd bring it to life in the real world, right? And we've been, I think, tremendously successful. And the real thing is, even if you want to do that, you can't. We're not there yet, right? We just don't have the technology. We have not reached a level where this is possible, right? And whenever you see people trying to, I think just this morning, I think I saw something about McDonald's withdrawing their drive-through automated experience, right? And it just shows you that whenever people think of this as an experience with no fallback, it's good to be ambitious, but this is a bit too ambitious, right? And coupled with that bad legacy of first generations of IVR, we don't have the luxury. We have to win back the trust of human callers so that they even engage, right? Once we do that, we can be more and more ambitious about the percentage of calls we want to handle in an automated way. But we're not there yet. And I think it's for us, a core product assumption is that if you can't deal with something, you hand off quickly, elegantly, so that the whole customer journey is tied together. And I think all too often, people like us, technologists, get carried away and think, we're just going to do the whole thing. Mm-hmm. And the truth is, why would you? There's always going to be new edge cases. And really, we're creating a new category. So if you think of Salesforce and sales ops people, they go together, right? You don't have Salesforce without having a sales ops person who's kind of handling it and chasing people and making them update entries and adapting the structure of it to the needs of your company and your sales process, right? Similarly, the contact center is there to be that, not human in the loop, but the human partner of the AI to bring the information through, to map new journeys, to make sure that the business is, doing things in parallel with the AI, because there's no other way to actually supply the information needed to do a good job.
Yeah, that's a good point. So it's not a replacement agent, if you will. It's just a different type of agent in a way.
Yeah, absolutely.
That makes sense. Everyone talks about AI, and it's this big, broad, topic. Definitely a buzzword, obviously, right? But specific to the contact center space, I know it's really accelerated the pace of innovation here. Could you spend a few minutes maybe speaking to some of the major changes you've seen, even just in the last year, and how you see the space sort of continuing to evolve when it comes to using AI in technology like this?
For sure. Well, look, I speak to a lot of clients, prospects. I think in this week alone, I've heard 3 different people tell me, like, hey, can you get the AI out of your name, right? Because it's overwhelming, right? And everyone's tried to latch onto the bandwagon, and I'm like, hey, look, we existed for 7 years. Here's 3 years ago in our deployments. Here's how it evolved. Look what changed, what didn't. But even now, at first, as generative AI really took off, I had investors telling me, look, you're not a new age AI company. You're not a real AI company. I'm like, I've done this my whole life. I've done nothing else. I remember going to a conference in Beijing where computational linguists ridiculed me for saying that I can learn everything from text and I don't need to, encode linguistic structure into these things that it can learn from data, right? So these days, we've gotten to the point where we're putting in a lot of this technology, generative technology, into our assistants, right? The majority of the new ones we build right now are fully generative. But equally, we get buyers, especially large companies in regulated industries, who say, look, we just want an intent-based thing that is not generative, right? And I think, you'll continue to hear that for some time until the dust settles and people gain some confidence, and we just create nomenclature and rules around what is an acceptable level of risk, what that risk means. You got to see it play out with other maybe slightly braver organizations, or not really braver, but just in a position where they can experiment a lot more. I think it's interesting right now. On the capability side, what we see is an ability to build much wider voice assistants, right? So, for example, we've always been really good and had differentiated technology for a high quality of voice understanding. We were able to understand that my name is Nikola Mrkšić, and this is my postcode, this is my date of birth, etc., right? Complicated inputs and names and dates, all of those things, right? That's important. You need to understand really well to hold that conversation. I think in terms of knowing what to say and how you can query different databases and things, what LLMs allow you to do is query a much wider application, right? So maybe I'm talking to you and you're, I don't know, let's say you're Comcast, and you have 100 different product lines and 100 different sub-products within every product line. Now it's gotten a lot easier to go deeper in those conversations because you have a thing that has very smart ways of accessing even deeply nested information in databases, rather than having to explicitly program every single way that a conversation can go, right? And we had a lot of this already. We've had our own, mini LLM, right? Only 600 megabytes. We thought it was a behemoth at the time that we built it in 2019, and we kept improving it and pouring more data into it. It's pretty small compared to GPT 3.5 or 4. But we already had a lot of these capabilities. So for us, the thing that we've gotten with better LLMs is just let's say we had a prototype of an electric car and we got a substantially better engine when OpenAI released their models, and the other vendors in open source now. So it's pretty exciting, right? I think what it means for buyers, and I think what it means for vendors like us is there are layers of this technology. And not everyone needs to, I hear CIOs of big companies pretending to know the difference between, Claude and GPT-4 and Llama. And I'm like, come on, none of those things actually really matter, right? But I think there are a lot of people now who are afraid of looking like they've expired if they don't know the answers to those things. So there's a lot of posturing. And as you said, it's a buzzword. Everyone throws AI around like there's no tomorrow. They use AI for everything and blah, blah, blah. So you look at all that and it's God, cutting through the noise must be really hard, right? And what we try to do is simple. So What we are focused on is better customer experience, lower waiting times, higher first call resolution, a level of automation that helps your whole contact center breathe, right? That's what really matters, that language and that outcome, right? Like what's in the model, like that's a problem for like our deployment teams, for our partners working with our technology. And I don't think the buyer needs to, do a quick online PhD in generative AI in order to reap its benefits, right?
Sure. Yeah. I think you bring up a really good point because you're right. There is sort of this, we often meet with customers all the time that, one of the first things they'll say is, hey, well, we need an AI roadmap. And we're like, okay, why?
Yeah.
Well, I don't know. Someone told me that I need to have one. It's like, okay, well, a lot of customers, I think the point is don't even know where to start in a lot of cases. And I can see what you're saying, where a lot of people have to sort of fake it till they make it, right? Because something new's come out and you worry about falling behind. But I think you're right. The reality is the space is so dense. It's information overload. Do you see anything particular that will happen from sort of a leveling out or evening out perspective, or do you think this is just how it's always going to be and it'll continue to get worse and more?
Oh no, I think that like the whole rush to buy a lot of AI. I mean, as you said, what does it mean, right? Like, why are you buying AI? Like, what problem do you have?
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's kind of like saying, hey, I need to go buy more software.
Yeah.
Like, cool, okay. I need to go buy more, I don't know, like food.
Yeah.
That's actually a lot more sensible, right? If there's a genuine need. And it's kind of the same thing. Like, what problem do you need to address, right? And if you do, like, how are you going to address it? And at the end of the day, it's just software, right? You're buying software, it's deployed and delivered in a different way to traditional SaaS, right? In some ways, it's actually more similar and should be thought of as on-prem software. Because while it's not hosted on-prem, there's that big element of customization where AI is mostly there to improve your workflows, right? Either to automate some of them, to make you more efficient with others, to give you insights from how they're done, to give you like a way of optimizing them and operating on them a bit more easily than changing the behavior of the whole workplace, right? That is what it does, right? So like you need to commit to where you think the current capabilities of artificial intelligence are so that you can reap the benefits, right? So I think like, market leaders will emerge and companies will do a lot to explain this to the market. And, if people are not early movers and don't do it themselves, they'll see some of their peers doing it in the same industry, right? Like we've deployed with, I think, 10 different casino groups now. I think everyone in Vegas now knows about PolyAI. I can tell you what we do, right? And I'm not sure that I could have expressed it that clearly before I had the first client, right? Because there's a lot of learning that you have to do for every industry to understand that. For them, for instance, the essential thing is to pick up every call, because when you do, even if you're handing off half of them, like no revenue generating call is ever missed. So they don't go to your competitor, right? Like in other regulated industries, it's more about, not having particularly long waiting times where the regulator steps in and fines you, right? Or takes your business or you go under administration. So it's really just like seeing is believing with these things. So like somebody has to do it first, right? Mm-hmm. And that work is on us and on people who have that both enthusiasm and the flexibility in their organizations to try out something new. And I think a bit of that wild push of like buy AI, look, it's helped us. Like, as of last year, most of our deals come inbound, right? I could not have imagined that, right? And we do a lot of great work together. And, I always thought that would be the world, right? Where we have to go and educate the market together to go and find clients. And while we still do a lot of that and we win some amazing deals, there's also just a lot of people that are in the market looking for these solutions. Now, will that change? Probably. From what I know, companies don't live their entire existence getting inbound. It gets more competitive, and then you still have to, win that trust. And that's where I think we do a lot of great work together. But I think the noise will quiet down a little. There's the classic Gartner, like hype cycle, and then the trough of disillusionment or something. Mm-hmm. We're probably not that far, right? Because like the hype has been pretty nuclear. And while, my wife could tell you about my GPT moment where at 5 a.m., I did something with it that I didn't think would be possible for the next like 3 decades in AI, right? Like the sequential reference resolution, where I'm like, hey, I think this is like important. She's like, psychopath, go back to sleep. Right? And I was like, no. Like, I was jet lagged because I'm perpetually in a plane from America to and from the UK, right? But it's huge, right? Like what happened, what's the breakthrough that OpenAI achieved by showing that way more data in a bigger model does give like orders of magnitude better performance capabilities we didn't think we'd have in a generation. Like that's big, and that's worth the hype, right?
Yeah.
Like what happens next in terms of how fast we can turn that very real advancement into like a transformation of how we live, use software and all that. Well, sometimes it goes fast, usually it takes time. And I think like it's gotten pretty aggressive towards it. So, like we were a serious company doing a lot of this before the hype. Obviously, it benefits us for the hype to keep going. But if when it goes away, we'll still be here doing what we do, right?
Yeah, absolutely. That's great. You talked a little bit about it earlier, but I think, I know you all have a little bit of a different approach compared to a lot of the competition, but specifically, we work with a lot of customers. Maybe they're on premise for their core contact center technology today and evaluating moving to the cloud. Maybe they're already on a cloud, based contact center system. And we see some of these, traditional CCaaS giants saying, hey, well, look, we've got intelligent virtual agents too. Not necessarily naming any one specific company or anything, but can you talk a little bit about how, the approach of PolyAI's more like a best in breed, hey, this is who we are, this is what we do, is different than sort of a traditional, hey, we're your entire, CCaaS ecosystem or environment, and we can do a little bit of everything?
Yeah, I mean, look, we are focused on what you would traditionally call IVR, right? Mm-hmm. We build and integrate voice assistants into your tech stacks and your telephony stack. That's the easy part for the most part, where we are there to help you reap the benefits of modern artificial intelligence by automating a lot of your workflows, right? To do that, we have a lot of proprietary technology that performs understanding, reasoning, and generation, right? Each of those three pockets is pretty deep, right? What the traditional contact center players will give you for the most part is a chatbot that's been voiceified, right? So plug in a speech recognizer, plug in text-to-speech, and then build a text-oriented thing, program it with a pretty crude, non-flexible tool. And the first thing that this does is it creates a very inflexible system. So those loops, or you getting stuck, not being understood, they become prevalent in that application. The second bit is it probably doesn't sound great. And the third bit is the moment you have to say something that's relatively complicated, right? Vocabulary from a specific industry, be it like, talking about like a reimbursement or about paracetamol or whatever it is, right? Like that vocabulary just won't work that well. God forbid that you have to decipher addresses, names, etc. A lot of that stuff is just like a general purpose speech recognizer. And that's a pretty like brittle tool that kind of works, but not really, right? And like those like lower and lower success rates for all three of those tasks just multiply. And instead of having something that works 90% of the time, you get something that works 20% of the time, right? And it's clunky, and it's frankly, if you just look at the incentives and you follow the money, right? What happens is those guys are selling seats in a contact center. It is in their interest for you to keep paying them for those seats, which means that they're not heavily incentivized to get you a high level of automation. So in that whole bundle approach where they say, and you can get this from us, take the box, right? You take the box, you don't get a lot out of it, right? And we've seen this with many, many different ones. I won't name anyone either, but we've seen it with most, right? And you get to a point where like you think you've done it, your customers hate it, you probably hate it, you're not getting any data out of it, and it hasn't really delivered a lot of meaningful like business returns. And that's where, like this technology is just not mature enough for a team of a dozen enthusiasts at a CCaaS vendor to do what me and my team of 150 people have been doing for 10 years, right? Yeah. Like we're ahead by many, many years, right? And it's not even just like, the LLM structure or the understanding piece. It's also how you build a pipeline of all of that working together and integrating so that it works for that business user, right? We spent, with PolyAI, we spent 7 years now trying to form and understand who that sales ops equivalent in the contact center is for us. That's really important, right? Because kids hacking things up with LLMs in the Bay Area, that's not the same persona as a subject matter expert in the contact center, right? And like they're very, very different. They care about different things. They use technology in a different way.
That's great. Yeah, I think that's good. And you make a good point that it's not that this is all you do, it's all you have done for 7 years. And so, you've got this really deep, extensive knowledge and expertise here, which I think is great. The last thing I think I want to pick your brain on is something just a little bit practical for a lot of the audience out there. Inevitably, when, audience is considering IVA or any purchase really, but specifically as it pertains to AI, I think a lot of customers have spend fatigue, or at least the finance teams do, right? Hey, COVID happened. Let's spend money, get people enabled to do whatever we can. Money's cheap. Let's just spend. And now we're seeing a lot of those contracts come up for renewal. Purchases are getting more scrutinized. Renewals are getting scrutinized, all that sort of stuff. So business cases have to be a lot stronger is what we're seeing to go and, find extra budget. And so to help empower some of our audience out there that are maybe thinking about trying to go and, explore something like this or get a project approved. If I were an end customer making a decision on whether or not, we should look at automating some of this through Poly or someone like Poly even, what guidance would you give me in terms of, hey, here are some of the ROI considerations to make? Some of them certainly can be table stakes that people are probably already thinking of, but with your unique perspective, I bet you can probably give us 1 or 2 pointers that everyone doesn't think of right away on things they should be able to think about.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think it depends on exactly what kind of company you are, right? If you're missing clothes that make you money, then it's simple, right? You'll get that money back. And that tends to be the easiest, sell for us, right? The second one is, is your service unacceptably bad? Because with the budget you have, you can no longer have the people you used to have, right? And there, I think we fixed that problem really, really effectively, right? Where, we'll start with maybe 30, 50% of automation. And in some cases, we'll go up as high as 70 to 90, even mid 90s for some use cases, right? Again, not a broad sword. It doesn't work for absolutely everything. And there are many things for which it doesn't. We're pretty forthright about it. But, compared to a lot of other AI, which is will make your agents better, which is a great use case, by the way, right? Mm-hmm. It's just a matter of it can be hard to prove, right? You don't know if maybe the attrition in the contact center decreased, people are staying longer, so your agents are now better, right? It's hard to look at the latent factors and say this was the decisive factor contributing to, I don't know, service levels improving, right? I think here, if you have those problems, and it comes back to do you have a need? Because if you don't have a need, you shouldn't be buying AI for the sake of telling people you bought AI, right? I don't think that's going to get you a lot of return. But if you do, then look at the problem and quantify what it's worth to you and your business, and you probably know how to do that immediately because someone's banging on your door and complaining about it because it's a business imperative fix that you have to implement, right? So once you know that, then you can also put the value of our labor very crudely against human effort needed to do that stuff, right? And for that in particular, you look at your effective price per minute. If it's in America and you're deploying something like PolyAI, your returns are going to be huge, right? We're talking 5x plus. If you're offshore, it might be a bit less, but there's still a pretty decent return on it. So that's, I think, maybe the simplest way to just think about ROI, because it is an effective minute to an effective minute.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. Wait, great, Nikola. This has been really, really great. I really appreciate some of the insights today. For the audience out there, the last thing I think is really relevant to you all is a lot of people don't know where to start. I mentioned that earlier. And one of the cool things we do at InflowCX is an AI impact assessment. So if you're out there man, this sounds great, I've listened to other episodes and it all sounds really cool and fun and it might help me, but you don't know where to start. That's exactly where we start with customers oftentimes. And basically at a high level, the AI impact assessment analyzes interactions, could be voice, could be digital, but helps you find some sort of low risk but really high impact ways that we can implement AI into your overall customer experience strategy. And then we can act as a guide and bring folks like Poly to the table to say, hey, based on your unique need, you should take a look at these folks because we really think they could help you based on the findings that we have. And so Contact us for the AI impact assessment. Certainly contact PolyAI for any of your intelligent virtual agent or automation needs. They've been a great partner of us for a while now. And Nikola, really appreciate you spending the time to come and talk to our audience.
It was a pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. Awesome. Thanks.